What is going on, you Australian Thorny Devils? In today's video, we're going to be going over a Marvel Rivals tier list for the entire game. I don't want to yap too much because I know a majority of you are just going to skip to the end of the video anyway, but before you do that, let me give you guys a quick disclaimer. This video is sponsored by absolutely nobody. I make the fucking rules around here, and I got 3 rules I got to tell you. Rule number 1 is that comfortability is very important in games like this. If I put a character in a low tier, but you're very comfortable on them, you're having success, and you like them, then keep playing them, you know? Don't just take everything with a grain of salt, basically. Rule number 2 is this is a general player-based tier list. So if we're talking about a high skill floor character, they're probably not going to go higher on the tier list because the majority of people won't be good at them. Whereas if we're talking about an easy character, they might be higher on the tier list because the majority of people will be at least decent at them. And rule number 3, the most important rule, is that if you disagree with any of the placements of these characters in these tiers, you're legally obligated to put in the comments that you fucking hate my guts and that you think I'm stupid. I'm just the messenger. So anyway, enough yapping. Let's get into it. It's in alphabetical order, and I'm going to talk a little bit about each character when we go through them. So let's start with Black Panther. Black Panther I'm putting in C tier. I just don't think he's really that good at diving. He struggles a lot against the characters that can fly, and there's a lot of characters like that. He has good mobility, but his ult is pretty freaking bad. And he's also a high skill cap character. So I think if you master this character, he can go up to maybe a B or even an A. But for the majority of the people playing this game, I would not recommend him. And I don't think, if you're playing ranked, you really don't want your noob teammates to be playing Black Panther right now. Moving on to Groot. Groot I actually think is a very strong character. I think, generally speaking, this game is pretty balanced. Every character is at least viable in my opinion, and I think the tanks especially are pretty freaking good. Basically every single one of them, and I think Groot is very, very strong. He's a very team utility type tank where he can put out a lot of damage and help out his team at the same time. His walls have a high skill ceiling. You can do a lot of cool stuff with them. You just have to be a little bit careful about walling your own teammates off with him. His ult is very, very strong, and you can combo with other ults because it can CC them in, keep them in the same place. So for like an Iron Man ult or any big damage ultimates like that. But yeah, I think a very strong character. You can't really ever go wrong picking him. And he's also very good with Rocket Raccoon, which we can get to in a little bit. Next up, we have Hela, who I'm going to throw in A tier. Arguable that she's S tier, and maybe an arguable that you could drop her down a bit, but I think A is the sweet spot for her. Super strong, inconsistent DPS character. Hit scan is so strong in this game because there's so much mobility. There's characters that can fly. So just being able to click right where somebody is and get constant DPS off, it's very, very good. She's also pretty safe with her mobility and the fact that she can turn into the little bird or the raven and fly away. But yeah, I also think her ult is actually not that good. It was pretty broken in the alpha, but I think people are getting adjusted and actually targeting her out in her ult, making it so you kind of have to pick like a sweet spot to use it. But you can't really go wrong with her because just her left click, basically. Just her base kit is so good. So yeah, one of the most consistent DPS characters in the game. Definitely an A tier character. Now on the flip side, we have Hulk, who I believe is probably the worst character in the game. There's just better tanks to play. He's not really that good at diving, and there's a much better character at diving that we're going to talk about. You guys probably already realize. But yeah, it's very hard for him to be in the middle of a team fight and really do all that much. I wish you could actually damage people when he stunned them with his Gamma Blast with his E button. I think that would make him a lot better. It does allow him to buy some time and to cancel out certain abilities and such, but for the most part, I would not recommend playing this character. I believe every other tank is better, and yeah, I think he definitely needs some buffs. And there's different ways you can buff him for sure, but do not recommend playing him as your tank. Next up, we have Iron Man, who I'm going to throw in C tier. He's a very noob-friendly character because his autos or his left clicks are actually very forgiving. You basically just have to click near people, and you're going to do damage because of the AoE. However, definitely gets hard countered by the hit scan characters in the game, and the DPS characters are going to be higher tier above him. He's good against melee characters. It's hard for them to get to him in the sky and all that. But unless you're able to get into some like sweet spots where they don't have line of sight on you, they're hit scan characters or they're heavy DPS characters, it's going to be hard for you to actually be that consistent DPS that you need. And also be the character that can like finish off kills like on a click by like a, like a Hell left click or Punisher when we start talking about him. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend him that much. I think maybe in the more noob games and the lower level games, he might be a little bit higher. You can get away with being super forgiving and just clicking those buttons. His ult is pretty strong as well, but I also think the better the players, people are going to be blocking it with Magneto shields and Doctor Strange shields and whatnot. So yeah, I think a decent character could go a little bit higher, but for the most part, Iron Man's just C tier. Next up, we have Loki, who I'm going to throw in A tier right next to Hela, his aunt or his sister or something. Doesn't matter. He's definitely A tier. Now, this character actually got nerfed from the alpha, but he's still very, very strong. His shift burst heal is absolutely insane, especially invulnerability. His decoys are also pretty strong, especially if you can get the crossfires going. Now, he lacks a little bit in healing output compared to some other characters in the game. However, he'll make up for it in damage in the fact that you have that ultimate and you can turn into whoever you want in the game, of course, within that specific game, because you have to have a line of sight on the character you want to turn into. But that's super, super strong and just on demand, like a Spider-Man on demand, freaking Magneto. Doesn't matter. Whoever's ult you want to be, I think that has a lot of outplay potential. So definitely an A tier character. Can't really go wrong with him. And yeah, I recommend him. Next up, we have Luna Snow, who's going to be our first S tier character. I believe she's the best healer in the game. Her ultimate is, if not the best ultimate, definitely top 3. Basically, team-wide invulnerability. It's super duper strong. She has probably the highest healing output of any character in the game. And I think healing is super, super strong in the game right now. So since it's so important and she's the best at it, I just kind of think she has to be S tier. You can't really ever go wrong picking her in your team comp. And there's not much more to say. She's pretty busted. Next up, we have Magik, who I keep calling Freya. She just looks like Freya to me. And maybe our first hot take of the video, super hot take, maybe. I don't know. I put her in A. I actually really like this character and think she's really good. She has a low skill floor, so she's very easy to get into, but she also has a high skill ceiling. And you can do a lot of cool things and have a lot of outplays with her. So between her portals and team fights, it's very hard for people to actually target you down and focus you out. Whereas other melee characters can maybe suffer. She can actually get in and out and get some good damage off. She also has good AoE with her swing. You can throw her imp down if you're just trying to target out one person. But for the most part, I think this character has a lot of different skill expressions. And her ult is also super, super good. It's really hard for the enemy team to deal with. And that overheal with that shield can make her very, very hard to deal with compared to some of the other melee characters. But yeah, I really like her. Maybe it's a hot take, but I actually think she's A. She's also super fun. One of the cooler kits in the game, in my opinion. So Magik or Freya? A. Now we have Daddy Magneto. He's so brawlic in this game. It's crazy. I'm throwing him in A as well. I think all tanks are pretty good for the most part, apart from maybe little Hulk down here. But I love this character. I think he has crazy damage potential while also being super helpful for the team tank-wise. You can shield your teammates. You can block them with your own shield. If you combo him with Scarlet Witch with his C ability with the sword swing, it is actually crazy how much damage you can do. I really, really like this character. His ult is super strong as well. Good counter ult because you can block Punisher ult with that. You can block any DPS character and just absorb everything and throw it back at them. So it's super, super good for that. One of the better ultimates in the game. Good base kit. Cannot go wrong with picking this character. And I especially like comboing him with Venom. You go Magneto plus Venom and just run at people. And it's a lot of fun. So yeah, definitely A tier for Magneto. Next up is Mantis, who I'm going to throw in A tier. Another healer. So another character that I just feel like has to go in A because healing is so strong. Has a lot of outplay and counter potential for people flanking because you can sleep them. You can interrupt abilities with that to cancel out certain abilities. Could be very, very potent, very strong. Another character I just think can't really go wrong with. So I'll just put her in A. Next up, we have Namor, who I don't think is the best, but I also don't think he's the worst. But I do think he's one of the most fun characters in the game. However, I'm just going to throw him in B. He actually got buffed going into the beta. They buffed his shift or his Aegis or his damage immune ability. You can actually move during it now, which helps him out a lot, I think. Also with some of the nerfs to the other characters. I think it gets a little bit better. Obviously, his weakness is he doesn't have hit scan autos, so he's going to be a little bit harder to play. And it gets a big headshot multiplier. You can actually 2-tap people with this character. Some good auto cancels as well. So he's got a bit of a higher skill ceiling. However, I also think you can just throw his turrets down, his little octopi or whatever you want to call them. You could throw those down. Those could do some decent DPS if people aren't killing them. And as long as you're like staying in the back line and just like chunking out spears, a lot of times you're randomly going to be getting headshots and stuff. So I think he does have a lot of viability. That's why I'm going to throw him in B tier. I also just want to throw him higher just because he's fun. But non-bias aside, or bias aside, B tier. For B tier for bias. We really didn't have any characters in B tier, but we're about to start filling it up. I'm putting Penni Parker also in B tier. She's a different playstyle type of tank, whereas Groot, Magneto, and Doctor Strange are this like team helpful utility style tank. Penni Parker and Venom are more of like this bruiser, DPS slash like dive playstyle style tank. And I think she's pretty decent at it. I don't think she's as good as the other tanks. And I also think her ult really isn't that strong. But she has some strengths and she will do a lot of damage. I think she's just pretty average, so I'd throw in B tier. Now, this character is anything but average. I'm throwing Punisher in S. I think the most consistent DPS character in the game. His turret is super strong. His shotgun is still busted. I'm not sure if they even changed it from the alpha to beta. That's one thing I'm not too sure of. Doesn't feel like they did. It's still very, very hard to dive him as any character when he has his shotgun out. It takes a little bit for him to pull it out, sort of like me. So it's going to be, you can maybe get some kills on him while he's doing that, while he's stuck in that animation. But for the most part, turret's good, shotgun is good. Ultimate is crazy strong. You just got to look out for counters like Magneto ultimate and shields blocking it, of course. But yeah, for the most part, most consistent DPS character in the game. can't really go wrong with picking him. Also insane with Rocket Raccoon power up. I'm talking insane. That infinite ammo, rapid fire rate, it's ridiculous. You combine that with all of his other good abilities and just his left clicking. Yeah, can't go wrong with him. Definitely S tier. Next up, we have Rocket Raccoon, who's another healer. I was a bit torn with this guy. I think when he combined with Groot or Punisher, he's definitely at least A tier. I think on his own, I actually want to throw him in B. I would rather have these other healers before him on my team. Now, don't get me wrong, he's still good. And the cool thing about healers in this game is they don't only just provide healing. They have other utility like damage boosts, reses and that kind of thing. So I think that's cool. And he definitely has a ton of potential. I just personally think he's just a tad bit below the other healers. And I'd rather have them on my team versus him. Unless, of course, I'm playing Groot, which I love playing Groot. So I will take a Rocket Raccoon on my head any day of the week. You can come ride me, buddy. Next up, we have Scarlet Witch, who I'm going to throw in B tier. Not the most consistent DPS in the game because she doesn't really have a lot of range. Even though her left click is infinite, you can literally click it forever. You have to be pretty close for it. And if you have to be a pretty close character, I feel like you need more burst in your kit. And she's pretty lacking on that side of things. Her ult definitely has burst, but I feel like that's more of a noob stomping ultimate. Unless you're comboing it with other big ultimates like Doctor Strange ult or something like that, where you can keep them CC'd and keep them distracted. For the most part, she's going to get DPS down when she goes in with her ultimate. So I think it's lacking on that front, but you could definitely get some like 3 or 4 man ultimates, get some clips off of it. But yeah, I would say also just pretty average. Good mobility though. She has the 2 charges of her little thing where she turns into an orb and runs away and is damage immune. And it's pretty hard to track her when she does that. So, she has some strengths, she has some weaknesses. And again, you don't even have to aim her left click. So I think when it comes to like, as far as like a noob friendly god, you can definitely pick this character and kind of own some people. So B tier. Next up, we have I'm going to rub some dirt in your eye. And that's going in B tier. He's one of my favorite characters in the game, but he also has a very high skill floor and a high skill ceiling. And I think if you master him, he can be very, very good. One of the better melee characters at getting in and getting out and getting the job done. And his ultimate can also be very game-changing. It can be very, very strong, especially if they're grouped up or you combo it with other ultimates. Very hard to deal with. As long as you're using your web slinging to get away and go to health packs and come back into the fight, I think he can be very, very good. But like I said, a very high skill floor, and I'm not just going to sit here and recommend him because he can be good if you finally master him, But I do think he has a lot of potential. And it's really not that crazy. As long as you get his web slinging down, I think even as a noob, you can probably do a lot of work because it's going to be hard for people to track you and hit you when you're swinging around and getting out of fights and back in. So yeah, I think B is a good spot for him. And that's where I'm going to leave him. Next up, we have Star-Lord. And time for a hot take. Drum roll, please. I'm putting Star-Lord in C tier. I don't know what it is. I just do not think this character is really that great. I never really go against a good Star-Lord. I never really have a good Star-Lord. Even when I play him, I just feel like I'm lacking something. I don't know. Maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe I'm bad at the game. Let me know down in the comments. But I actually don't think he's really that good, especially when you compare him to all these other characters. And before, I thought like in the alpha, I thought his ult was absolutely broken. Now that people are getting better or starting to understand these characters more, I feel like he's actually pretty easy to single and target out in his ultimate. Now, you could always say like, oh, maybe his healers aren't healing him. Maybe he's not getting shields when he should be. Maybe he's not positioning himself the best way. But as far as like all the games that I've played over like the 15 or 20 hours that I've played this game over the past few days, it really never seems like there's a great Star-Lord in the game. And I don't think it's the players. I really think that maybe his kit is just lacking something. It is a high skill ceiling kit. So maybe if somebody's really, really good at him, they can really go crazy and just constantly be getting headshots, constantly dashing away and doing all that. But yeah, for the most part, I just don't really think the character is that great. And there's better characters to play that are a bit more consistent and more forgiving. So yeah, Star-Lord, C tier. Hot take. I'm sorry. Next up, we have Storm, who I'm going to throw in B tier. Her ultimate is very, very strong, pretty game-changing. Her auras are also pretty nice. Just like an average character that I think you can play. Not the highest skill ceiling ever as well. So definitely a noob-friendly character for any of you guys that are trying to get into the game. But yeah, B tier, there's not much to say a lot of the time. Just average. Play them if you want. They're good. They could be bad. Storm, definitely in that B tier. Doctor Strange, I'm also going to throw in B tier. We really filled it out here. I think at a high level, he could probably be A or S, especially if you're utilizing that portal to his maximum potential and the fact that he can float. I've played against some good Doctor Stranges as melee characters and DPSs, and he was so hard to deal with, and he just focused me out. He's very, very annoying. But for the most part, just as a general rule of thumb, I would just throw him in B. I think some of these other tanks are a little bit easier to get into and a little bit more forgiving. You're not really going to mess him up as often. Whereas this character, you want to be maximizing the potential of his portal to really get the most out of his kit. And I also feel like his ult sometimes can be pretty hit or miss compared to some others. But yeah, like I said, has a ton of potential, and you can't really go wrong with tanks in this game. Tanks in general are really good. So yeah, I would throw him in B. I will say though, if you can combo or use his portal for characters that have low mobility, so you can get them into the backline. So let's say, for example, Magneto really has no mobility in his kit. If you can get a nice portal off and have a Magneto just be flanking them or be right in the middle of it instantly off that portal, it can be very, very strong. So yeah, just some potential for sure for Doctor Strange. And like I said, every character in this game has their pros, and every character is viable in my opinion. So yeah. And speaking of tanks, we must talk about the best tank in the game, Venom. This character is absolutely insane. Like I said, his playstyle is a little bit different. It's more of a bruiser. You're not exactly helping out your team as far as like just being tanky for them or shielding them off, but you are helping them in the sense that you're killing the enemy team, absorbing all of their damage, making it hard for them to do really anything. His shield is one of the most broken abilities in the game. You combo that with his ult, the fact that it gives you percentage max HP increase. You can literally get like 2.5, 3k HP. I've seen some crazy shield numbers. He's crazy high mobility as well with his swinging, just like Spider-Man. It's so hard to deal with a tank who's that tanky, who also has that much mobility, and still does a lot of damage. And his left click is also very forgiving. It's very easy to hit, and the headshots do a lot of damage. One of the few tanks that can actually do headshot damage, which is a little bit surprising. But again, he's more of like a DPS style tank. So yeah, probably the best character in the game right now. And he just came out. The beta just came out. Usually when new characters are released in games like this, they make them pretty broken so they can get better feedback, better data on them. So people want to play them so they can figure out what they need to do with them. So he'll probably get nerfed, but right now, absolutely insane character, probably the best in the game, definitely S tier. Next up, we have Adam Warlock, who I'm going to throw in A tier. Another healer, can't really go wrong with him. He also offers other things when it comes to his team-wide res and his single res and himself resing. He can kind of do some weird stuff, some wonky stuff, maybe put himself out of position, get killed, come back, cocoon back in, and be instantly ready for his team to heal again. So you can have some cool outplay potential there. Another strong character, brand new character. I'm assuming they made him pretty good. I am a little bit confused about Adam Warlock. It's interesting that he's a healer as far as like lore goes, is what I'm saying. When he's has the potential to be such a strong character damage wise, just from lore. But of course they gotta balance the game out somehow. But anyway, disregarding that tangent, yeah, I think Adam Warlock's really good. Has a ton of potential. Also can do some good damage numbers because his left clicks are also hit scan. So yeah, I think Adam Warlock, probably A for Adam. So that's it, guys. That is the tier list. If you just skipped to the end of the video and you're looking at this now, I talked about it a bunch, but basically every character in this game is viable. There's some characters with some low skill floors and some high skill floors. We kind of try to take that into account. And if you're comfortable on a character, keep playing them. You know, don't look at a tier list for validation. That I think people do that a lot of the time, and they're like, "Oh my God, you put my character that I love in C tier. You're so stupid and wrong." Which you should be saying that. Comment that if you believe that. But yeah, for the most part, take every tier list with a grain of salt. Hopefully you were entertained by this, maybe learned a thing or two. And if you're new to the game and you're trying out characters, then definitely recommend this top row or even this A row. And I think you'll do well basically every game you pick these characters, as long as you aren't blind and deaf. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please leave a like and a comment. It would really help me out. And I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe and healthy as always. Peace out.